All right, guys, here we go. We got this video from Anna Marie Forcino. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm probably not. But anyway, it's about the ableist rhetoric of teachers off duty. My understanding is like teachers off duty is just like it's like a podcast. That's all I know about it. But you guys wanted me to watch it. So let's check it out. Let's see what they're doing.
Alrighty. Well, hello, sinners. How are you?
Wow.
On today's installment of
What just happened? What did we just do?
the Letterboard of Truth, our quote of the day is listen to disabled folks. First, there was Watergate.
Disagree.
No, the other one.
I'm just
Then there
kidding.
was Categate,
What happened in Watergate?
Tattoo-gate, and now
What?
Teachergate. Anyway, let's talk about the Teachers Off Duty podcast.
Okay. Wow. It's very snazzy. Why am I not attacking? Come on, bro. Do something.
If you've been paying attention, you know that the American public school system is a dumpster fire. Corrupt politicians continue to undermine K-12
Sure.
curriculum by banning literature about intersectional topics like gender, race, and sexuality, and it seems like the ban is only escalating. As of
Sure, there is some like one book in particular that was inappropriate to be in like a library. I still am not aware if it was in an actual school library or a library that's like also attached to a school. I know it sounds like a weird thing to say, but those can be two different things. Either way, generally speaking, though, it's not as widespread, right? We talk about that all the time.
2020, according to the Century Foundation, public schools are underfunded by nearly $150 billion a year. That's right. I said billion. With a B. However, school districts with large demographics of Latina and Black students are more likely to be underfunded than predominantly white districts, facing an average deficit of over $5,000 a student. Not to mention the increase in classroom size,
That was a PvP event.
the decrease in safety, and lack of adequate pay. No wonder why a teacher shortage is on the horizon. Considering that teachers are laying the educational foundation for the next generation, you'd think that they'd be treated just a little bit better. As someone who's in their mid-20s and graduated years ago, the idea of stepping into a school again still sends shivers down my spine. You couldn't pay me enough money to go back to high school for a week. So the fact that teachers can do that 5 days a week for 9 months out of the year is incredible. Don't get me wrong, I've definitely had my fair share of bad experiences with teachers, but that doesn't take away my undying respect and admiration for them. However, teachers aren't immune to criticism, which brings me to the topic at hand. So we'll be talking about the controversy surrounding the Teachers Off Duty podcast that's emerged recently.
Got a little bit. You hear that little bit of that Italian. The teachers off duty. You hear a little bit of that Italian in there. You can't escape it.
This podcast is one of 4 shows produced by a media company called Board
Called?
Teachers. According to Board
Sorry, it's
Teachers
not a bad
About
thing.
page on their website, Board
I'm from New
Teachers
York.
is a platform for
New
educators
York.
to escape the chaos and find humor in the frustration and exhaustion that comes with the teaching profession. It's inspired by the sweat, the
I'm sorry.
tears, and the unrelenting passion of underpaid and overworked teachers all over. It's
Whoa.
your portal to share laughter, release stress, and empower and celebrate all who dedicate their lives to shape the young minds of our future leaders. The main players in today's controversy are Gabe, Tell, Lauren, and Devin. Gabe Dannenbring is a middle school teacher with 1.6 million followers.
Whoa.
Then there's Tell Williams, more famously known as Mr.
How do teachers feel about that? I don't know how I feel about just having a teacher be that popular on social media. I don't know why. Something about it is weird. I don't know what it is, but something feels weird, like inappropriate, not in like any like horrible way, but like something feels like a little like why, like that seems like maybe that's, I don't know, something makes me uncomfortable about that. You know, maybe it's the idea that like if your kid makes a mistake or something, they could signal boost it, or your kid possibly being in content, they may not, I might not want my kid to be in content or something. Something about it though kind of bothers me a little bit. Yeah,
Williams.
now you can't not hear her accent, right?
Pre-K on TikTok. He's a preschool teacher and therapist with 2.5 million followers. Next is Lauren Woolley, a 5th grade teacher with almost 6 million followers. And finally, there's Devin Siebold, a former teacher turned comedian with 212,000 followers. He's also the co-host of Crying in My Car, another podcast produced by Board Teachers. I should mention Devin was only a guest for this episode. Tell, Lauren, and Gabe are recurring hosts of Teachers Off Duty, but from time to time, other educators under Board Teachers make a guest appearance. The premise of the podcast is that it's hosted by teachers who share their experiences working in education with a comedic twist. I'd never really seen or listened to Teachers Off Duty before this all happened. Clips from the podcast have shown up on my For You page from time to time, but other than that, my opinion on them was pretty neutral. The clip in question is from an episode uploaded on April 9th called Parent-Teacher Conferences Gone Wrong, but it only started circulating over the past few weeks. The conversation started with Lauren talking about how she's not looking forward to upcoming parent-teacher conferences. Everyone teaches at different grade levels, so
See, mean, if I was a parent listening too, I'd be like, oh man, this teacher fucking hates me. Fuck her. I'd be upset. I don't know. I guess that's another one of my potential fears is like, would they, what's the potential of them getting like upset and then kind of blasting that on social media? Oh, I had this fucking parent or whatever, they could bitch about such this, that, and the other thing. I'd be like, oh man, like I don't know, it made me feel uncomfortable. It would just make me feel a little uncomfortable just having like allowing teachers to do that. But maybe I'm overreacting. What game is this? Diablo 4. What's going on, brother? How you doing, Ruined Leon?
They asked Lauren what parent-teacher conferences were like at her elementary school. This led into the discussion of whether or not she likes having the student in the room during the meeting.
I think there are benefits to both. And like there are sometimes things you just want to talk about with the parents, but majority of the time, like I like when the kids are in the room too because it holds them accountable.
Now, this is where it gets dicey.
I had a couple of kids that are like, they're on IEPs, but like they're very, very like.
Oh, I know what an IEP is. An IEP is like an individual educational program. Oh, right? I'm fucking know this. My wife, I don't know if you guys knew this. My wife is a behavioral specialist for adults with intellectual developmental disabilities. An IEP is a particular, thing that's implemented to help the student succeed. I'm almost certain that I'm correct with this. A written statement of a student with a disability that is developed, reviewed, and revised by a committee on special education subcommittee. Okay, yeah. I'm just trying to make sure I know what it is. I wanted to see if I knew if I got it right. Individualized educational program. All right, cool. I'm so based. I love it when I can take real world experience and put it in my butt.
Barely qualified as an IEP. Like they're very, very like barely qualified as an IEP, and so. I'll talk to the parents and be like, there's like, they have every ability to do this, 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 and this, and their grade is this. And I'm telling them like, oh, they have a study guide, they have this, I send home, and the parents just go, really? I didn't know about that. And they like,
look is the best.
Yeah.
Lauren told a story about a couple students who weren't fully honest about bringing home their schoolwork. But what many people, including myself, have an issue with is Lauren saying that these kids barely qualified for IEPs.
You shouldn't. And I think that like I want to hope we don't virtue signal over this topic, but like listen, my wife works a little bit with IEPs and whatnot, not specifically with kids, but we talk about it. And there are instances where I can understand why a teacher might think an IEP is unnecessary, especially since it might seem counterintuitive to the growth of a child. So for instance, like maybe there's a kid that has an IEP because maybe he or she or they struggle with social interactions and their IEP is to not call on them in class, right? And you would say like, oh, that makes sense, but it doesn't. Fundamentally speaking, you need to have exposure therapy in order to correct some behaviors. Now, on the flip side, you also have to understand that there are medical or professionals who are the ones diagnosing these things, and obviously they come first. But I think that as a teacher, at the very least, you're allowed to have the thought of this seems disproportionate and counterproductive as long as you're following the IEP, right? And so I think it's okay for her to think that. It's not ableist. People with disabilities, that doesn't mean that every, people with, or, in the IDD community, just because they get a particular treatment doesn't necessarily mean it's what's best for them. Sometimes they can get kind of lost in the system. And, people might not be considerate enough. There might not be enough robust, welfare to help these kids, and so sometimes there might be almost like a misdiagnosed IEP, not a misdiagnosis on them. So it's okay for them to say something like that. I think that's okay. But again, it's okay to have be apprehensive about an IEP. It's not okay to not implement it. If she was like, I'm not going to implement this IEP because I think it's stupid, that's wrong, and she should be punished for that. But if she's just like, I think that this, I don't like this, it bothers me, I don't think that they need this IEP, I'd be like, okay, that's an opinion, and she's fine to have that opinion. So
in case you're not familiar with the American public school system, an IEP or individualized education program is a legal document under United States law that is developed for each public school child in the U.S. who needs special education. It is created through a team of the child's parent and district personnel who are knowledgeable about the child's needs. An IEP is slightly different from a 504, which is a similar document that increases accessibility in classrooms for disabled students. A 504 plan is geared towards ensuring a student has equitable access to a learning environment. An IEP focuses on educational benefits and often includes direct services such as speech or occupational therapy. To get an IEP plan, a student's disability must interfere with their ability to fully benefit from the general education curriculum, meaning that they need specialized instruction. To get a 504 plan, a student's disability must hinder their ability to learn in a general education classroom without accommodations. Following Lauren's story, Gabe joked about how the car ride home will be awkward after the parents find out their child is lying.
You messed up.
I love that moment when you tell the parents what's going on, and then the parents just slowly turn and look at the kid like, oh, that's not what you told me.
Yeah.
And you just know right away,
yeah.
like, oh, this is not going to go good once they get in the car. This is not going to go good for them.
After an ad break, Devin chimed in with his own quips on the subject, and this is what—
I mean, this probably is funny. Even if the kid has a disability, doesn't mean that it can't be like a funny thing. Kids with disabilities are still kids, and like kids lie to their parents, and the parents get upset with it, and then it's a normal interaction. So got it. Don't be lying, kids. That's what I would say.
what he had to say.
Like when you get to like basically talk crap about the kid and the kid's there, because you could be like, this kid is D-U-M-B, and I would be worried about him knowing what I'm saying, but he can't spell. So he's
that's
just
a little
sitting
rude.
over there going,
Sure.
I'm dome, I'm dome, and so you got to like kind of lean into it, lean into it.
The joke is that by spelling out the word dumb, certain students won't know their teachers are making fun of them because they're so
Stupid.
dumb.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, we're still talking about disabled children here. Devin's joke—
Oh, are we? I figured that was just part. Wait, why do we assume that they're still talking about disabled? Maybe I'm wrong, but it sounded like they were having a general conversation about bringing kids, having the kids there for parent-teacher conferences, and then she mentioned IEPs, and then they kind of just went back to just talking about the conversation fundamentally. I didn't get the read they were still talking about disabled kids.
is what really sent fans over the edge, and rightfully so. Many educators,
Sure.
parents
I
of
could see
disabled children,
why.
and disabled folks themselves express their hurt and anger over the comments
That's fair,
made by
though.
the Teachers Off Duty podcast.
Sure, okay.
Barely
Yeah.
qualifies for an IEP. Student is too DUMB to understand what you're saying.
Yeah, this is fair
That's
criticism.
when children are about to get in trouble with their parents.
Yeah.
Not respecting the preferred pronouns and preferred names of our trans students. I'm sorry.
Where'd the trans part come? I didn't even see that. But yeah, he shouldn't have spoke like that, even about any kids that weren't on an IEP or a kid that didn't have a disability or anything. You shouldn't be speaking about that. That's inappropriate and unprofessional to do. So,
We're a human.
It doesn't fix anything!
I'm going to be a little raw, and this is in particular to
maybe
all
you should
those
better
teachers that
audio.
were on the Teachers Off Duty podcast. While you think it's fun to make fun of children with disabilities and call children—
that's also a good point too. Somebody, just because you have an IEP doesn't mean that you're disabled. My wife says this is. I would just say like I probably like there's a possibility because I had I guess I still do, but I had behavioral problems and I have ADHD, and it could be something that like has an issue or it hinders my ability to succeed. I don't know if I would call that a disabled student just because you have an IEP. Or like it depends like who. I think that the way that they spoke was like very inappropriate to calling kids dumb. In order to get an IEP, you have to have a diagnosed disability. But what disability? I mean, I guess as somebody with ADHD, like I don't know. I guess I wouldn't really consider that like a as hindering as something else. And so, but yeah, you generally have to have some kind of a disability to have an IEP that has some impact. It doesn't mean that you are somebody that's like very, very high support needed, right? There's different levels of support for people, so you could be lower support needed. Either way, it doesn't matter. I don't know if they were specifically talking about people with disabilities, but it's inappropriate to start calling kids dumb. This is one of those things where that would upset me. That's one of the things that I don't like, or why it makes me apprehensive about some kind of a student, or excuse me, a teacher having like a robust platform like this.
I can't read.
You had an IEP for dyslexia. Yeah, you would probably say like that wouldn't be as like a high support needed as somebody that maybe has like a higher support needed Down syndrome or autism or something like that. So, I don't know. I don't know if they were trying to be rude to people with disabilities, but they're still being very inappropriate.
Horrible things. I'm going to get ready to pack my daughter's bag for school, where I have to pack 2 AAC devices so she can try to learn to talk. And I'm going to write how her night was, because this is the only communication that I get from the school, because it's the only way I know how my daughter's school day was.
Rocket Room was super chatted $1.99. Off topic. The Bible assigns personhood at birth.
Okay, poggers. I don't feel like having some kind of an abortion discussion right now. Okay. Anyway, okay. So listen, to be charitable to the podcast, if they were still talking about students with disabilities, which again I don't know if that's true, they had mentioned that it seems like the IEP was unnecessary, which means that they probably weren't talking about like higher support needed students. And I'm not saying that these parents have no right to be offended, because they have every right to be offended, 1,000%. But I also think that I don't think that they were intentionally trying to upset people, especially parents and students that are much higher support needed. Like this person seems to be a parent of a student that's very high, like that's much higher support needed than somebody else. Just to be clear.
Every day, and I read it every day.
And I'm sure that's something that really probably sits with her, because it can be it's taxing to have something like that. It can be like a lot. So I get that. Yeah.
To have people call kids like my daughter that word.
You
guys are so wrong. The only communication I get. And then what, you want to make fun of them behind their back? Man.
That's fair.
Horrible people.
Oftentimes, a teacher is a child's first bully. The guy at the end is wrong. Talking bad about a child is never okay. It should be creating a convo with both parent and child to help correct the situation. This is a conversation you have. This is a conversation that you have when when you're like alone with your wife. You're like, God damn, one of these kids is so dumb. You shouldn't be, but you know what I'm saying? Like, that's a conversation you have when you're by yourself. You don't say this on a podcast to offend, because it's offensive to the students, and the teachers that listen are going to get upset. So heartbreaking as an IEP kid, and knowing I had teachers that hated me because my brain just...
For love your content, this is the first I'm watching live while finishing my final assignment for high school ever. Oh, cool, man. That's awesome. I appreciate that.
Doesn't process some things. Gosh, I have an IEP, and if this is what teachers do, this is so saddening. Unfortunately, this is a very
saddening. I see why you have an IEP, idiot. No, I'm just kidding.
Common occurrence for students with IEPs. A good number of commenters shared stories of teachers ignoring their support needs and even outright mistreating them for needing accommodations. So when they heard the awful comments made on teachers off duty, it reminded many disabled folks of how poorly they were treated in school. I wanted to hear more perspectives, so I asked my audience to share their experiences if they had an IEP or 504 in school. I would recommend going to my community tab if you want to delve further, but here are just a few of the 700 plus responses I received. I don't have an IEP, but I have a 504 for hearing loss. My teachers all ignore it, and some of them refuse to grade me differently for hearing-based projects, mostly foreign language, because I still get good grades. Multiple teachers have said in response to my parents and the guidance counselor that I just need to pay more attention in class. Overall, it has not been a good experience, and teachers have always made me feel guilty when asking for help. Horrible. None of my teachers follow it, and when I brought it up, they told me to stop being demanding. My diagnostic appointment for my autism was a demeaning 6-hour process I regret, and my IEP assessment was even worse, making me feel like a toddler. My teachers mainly talk down to me like a toddler, which kills me. I have a math teacher right now who uses a baby voice on me. I'm in high school. My school district is infamous for not following IEPs and 504s to the point where they only rarely give them out because the teachers know there's no point of them here. My overall experience has been horrible. Almost none of my teachers have ever followed it or even bothered to read it, and I've specifically been told by a guidance counselor, who was the main overseer of my IEP, to not take adaptive PE because I'd be with the really disabled kids. For context, I'm physically disabled to the point of not being able to walk for more than 15 minutes, even with a cane. The diagnostic process was possibly worse. I was repeatedly told...
Maybe you should walk with an Undertaker then. It's a good wrestling joke. It's pretty funny. No, but these sound pretty bad. These sounds like the cases of teachers being dismissive of people's IEPs and their particular struggles. So I understand that being linked to the general sentiment of like, oh, I don't think that this student needs this IEP. Because that's what, right? Like, I get that being linked to that general sentiment. Like I said, you can think whatever you want about the student. If you think that they don't need it, like, you do you. But understand that, like, it doesn't matter what you think. You have to implement it as if it is needed because it was done by professionals. So
told that I should try to lose weight and that I was probably just vitamin deficient. I ended up having symptoms so severe that we had to go to the literal Mayo Clinic just for them to tell us that they didn't know what
the ketchup clinic.
Wait it out. Eventually, I was diagnosed with CRPS, POTS, EDS, and a few more things, but it took many years. My teachers treated me fairly normal, but I'm physically disabled and not visibly unless I'm using my wheelchair or cane. My middle school gym teacher was horrible, though. At one point, I told him I couldn't play volleyball because it hurt, and he said, no, it doesn't, and made me play anyway, which left me unable to use my arms for anything the next few days. Overall, the system as we have it is
where are the parents in that instance? Because if I had a kid with all those issues and like they couldn't do that kind of stuff, and then the teacher didn't let them, I would go to the school and I'd chew them out. I mean, I wonder why that's not happening.
Extremely ineffective if you'd like to keep your child in public school, unfortunately. That's not to say that people haven't had positive experiences as well. In the first grade, I started to be pulled out of normal classes to be put one-on-one with another teacher to help me keep up with my peers. It continued like this until I switched schools in 4th grade, and that was when I actually tested to see if I had any learning disabilities, which I actually did. After this was confirmed, all of my teachers, including my mother and myself, were brought in for a conference to discuss exactly how the teachers were going to be helping me keep up in classes. Basically, for core classes, there would be another teacher or aide to help assist me or anyone else that happened to be in my class if they needed help. Overall, my experience was good. They always asked me how they could help me, understanding things better in both classes and in teacher-student settings. Obviously, people will be people, and some aides were kinder and more helpful than others, but I'm very grateful for all the help they gave me during my time in school. I personally never had a negative experience with the teachers treating me differently. It was always the students that were mean about me needing some extra help in class. Not an IEP, but a 504. My diagnosis was surprisingly easy back in 2020. I didn't even think I had autism beforehand, but I'm lucky to say my experience with it so far has been nothing but positive, with teachers being understanding and sometimes even go out of their way to give me extra help and be supportive. My overall experience was amazing. I was finally able to get the support I needed. The diagnostic process wasn't easy. It took a couple months of testing, and I remember it being very tedious and repetitive. Teachers treated me differently, but I feel they were more understanding, though that could have been because I was able to go to such a good school. We had a lot of different branches of special education there, and we had the highest population of deaf students in our state, so I think that helped a lot. I just want to mention that people's positive experiences don't invalidate or falsify others' negative experiences.
No, of course not. But I think that the right thing to ask, the right question to ask, is how prevalent are the negative experiences versus the positive experience, or even the neutral experiences, right? Because because there seems to be an issue, but how widespread is that issue? Is that issue happening across the board, where it's like, hey, 50% of these experiences are negative, or is it like, oh, 10%, which is still too many, but you get my point, right? That's more of the question.
And vice versa. Growing up with an IEP is going to be different for everyone. Ideally, every student with a disability would be treated with kindness, compassion, and respect in and out of the classroom, but after looking through my community tab and many, many TikTok comments, unfortunately, that's not always the case. Some people even began...
And then also, I would consider something, I don't trust TikTok people, commenters, because sometimes they... aren't, there need to be different types of studies done, but okay, yeah, I'll keep going.
Saying that Meghan Trainor was right in cursing out teachers on her podcast Workin' It a couple months ago. If you're not aware of that drama. Back in April, Meghan Trainor was talking about her time in school with Trisha Paytas on her podcast, which is a whole other...
She went to school with Trisha Paytas? What the fuck?
Can of worms. Just because she has a few funny sound bites floating around, I don't think someone like Trisha Paytas should be given a platform, but I digress.
I think Trisha's fine. She's a very problematic person that finally seems to be doing better, right? But that is a conversation for another day.
The issue of homeschooling came up, and they expressed their frustrations with the public education system in the U.S., which led to Meghan saying this.
Oh, but we're homeschooling our kids. Same. I think everyone should, everyone on TikTok is. They're like, this is what it's like to have a kid in school in America. I have a bulletproof backpack. I was like, fuck all that. Like that, but also kids can be mean. Teachers. That was my trauma. Teachers, but then also, the violence. I mean, I think it's just that thing. It's not even private school. It's just like having them homeschool.
Many people.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think personally, my wife and I are starting to have that conversation. But not so much for the violence, which is an issue, but more like we've talked about moving to Florida, and with this whole fucking situation going on where a teacher played a Disney movie that had a gay character in it. It makes us not want to go to Florida because they're wasting fucking resources. A teacher played a video about a Disney movie that had a gay kid in it or a gay person in it, and they had a meltdown, and now they're wasting resources by investigating. That's fucking psychotic. That's fucking psychotic. That's insane to me. I have no interest in bringing my kid to that system. And so, like, we've been talking about the potential of doing something like that, too. Homeschooling, if we move to Florida first, sure, because, like, the education's probably fucking dog shit. It's fucking crazy. That's fucking wild to me, man. And so, like, that's the part that I'm afraid of. All this discourse around gay kids in schools being, like, horrible. It's insane. These people, they're fucking... students staying home from school because they put a pride flag up. It's psychopath shit. Like, it's sensitive baby bullshit. Talk about how sensitive liberals are, and then when a gay thing exists near your kid, you have a fucking meltdown. You're a baby. You're a fucking child if you do that shit. It's crazy to me. It's just fucking wild.
People took offense, claiming that Meghan was not only out of touch, but also contributing to the pre-existing negativity surrounding teachers in 2023. Meghan apologized for her crass language, claiming that her anger in the moment came from her loved ones' negative experiences with teachers.
Teachers of TikTok and teachers of the world, I recently said F teachers on the podcast, and it's not how I feel. I was fired up because we were talking about how sending your kid to school here in America is so horrific. And what all of us have to go through, but especially teachers, is not normal and not okay. I had Trisha Paytas on the podcast, and I knew her history with her teachers. And I knew my husband's history with his teachers, and I was bullied by some teachers. So in that moment, I got angry and said,
"Wow, let's be clear about Trisha's history with teachers. Seems to be a bit disputed, considering her penchant to be misrepresentative of reality. So I don't know if you actually know her history with. I don't even know if she knows her history with teachers at this point, considering how fucking crazy she is. Sorry, guys. No offense. I'm just saying, a little kooky.
F teachers, F those specific human beings back in the day, but I did not mean that to all teachers.
Megan received a mixed reaction to her apology, and Tell, one of the co-hosts of Teachers Off Duty, even made a response video.
I love teachers. I fight for teachers.
Hi there, Megan. I'm Mr. Williams. I'm a pre-K teacher and a therapist. I just want to know if the teachers that you speak of that you fight for, if they're in the room with us right now. Now, I'm just kidding, but listen, I don't know if you watch the news or anything, but as someone who fights for
what does that mean?
Teachers. I'd assume that you wouldn't let something as stupid as saying, fuck teachers, get out there, you know? That's not really fighting or advocating for us, okay? We're just getting shit on even more. We get lost in the heat of the moment. We say stupid things that we don't really mean, right? But here's my issue. I, too, have a podcast. And I've said things I regret on the show. Maybe I've dropped an F-bomb. Maybe something didn't come out the way I wanted to. I knew it could be flipped around. Here's the thing. That has to go through editors. And then probably you have to take a listen to it before it gets posted. And you proved it each set of the way. Now, at one point, did you sit there and say, wow, I got lost in the heat of the moment. I didn't mean fuck teachers. Hey, can you pull that out? No. You proved for it to go out there. That's my issue. Because at several times along that way, you could have said, ooh, I don't want to say fuck teachers anymore. I want to say, let's go fight for them. But you did it.
Let's fight teachers.
Really
fight them.
This will blow over. You're famous. It'll be fine. But I really hope you know how disappointing this was.
Well, it should blow over. It's not really that big of a deal. Like, let's be real. It's not that big of a deal, you know. The school systems, teachers probably aren't as bad as people are saying. One of the problems, like when they talk about school shootings, is like they happen too much in the United States, but they don't happen that much if you look at it in like a vacuum, I guess. Is that what you say, political nerds? You know, it's a horrible thing to say it like that, especially when that discourse is happening. But if you think about it, like it doesn't happen as often, you know, in the way that we talk about it. And that has a lot to do with the way that we have conversations about a lot of different media, where it can get like a little riled up, where it's like, oh my God, there's so many shootings. And like, what, there's like one, like a 100% of schools will be shot up. You know what I mean? My point isn't to diminish it. My point is that, you know, you can, sometimes these conversations get a little bit like hyperbolic, you know, unintentionally hyperbolic without people really realizing it. So it's just something to bring up.
And please keep in mind that someday your babies are going to grow up and they're going to have teachers. I really hope by then you can find your kind words.
While I agree with Mr. Williams, I think it's ironic that he called out Megan for letting the final edit go through, because you could easily turn around and accuse Teachers Off Duty of doing the same thing. Sure. Given that they've all worked with children for years, and I assume they've taught several students with IEPs or 504s, you would think at least one of them would turn around and say, hey, maybe it wasn't our intention.
I don't think it's a problem that he called her out. I think it's a problem with the condescension of calling her out. Makes you look like a little bit of a silly goose, considering you guys have been a little bit sussy, like a character from the popular hit video game Wreck-It Ralph.
But we come off like we're mocking disabled kids. Maybe we should cut this portion out. The fact that they initially didn't see what was wrong with their comments is rather concerning. Initially, Megan received tons of...
I think it's one of those things where if we're going to be just as charitable to both Megan and Teachers Off Duty, and Megan probably actually wasn't trying to say I hate all teachers, but she was like expressing a concern for some of the aspects of teaching. Whereas the same thing with Teachers Off Duty, they weren't trying to say that everybody that has an IEP is a bad person. They were just talking about some specific instances. But like, it can be very impossible to qualify everything that you say. I try to, but even there's different things that you're going to communicate that aren't going to come off correctly to some people, because like, you know, we're all different people with different life experiences. And so for teachers, they might resonate with them in a way where it's like, yeah, you know, I have some students with like an IEP and it seems like it doesn't need to exist. And then you're going to have some people that'll interpret that like the way that they meant it, and then the way that they didn't mean it, and then you kind of get all over the place. That doesn't make it right, but I think that that's fair to say about most people aren't trying to be hateful. in general.
Of flack for saying F teachers on her very large platform.
Fuck
However,
teachers.
Once teachers off duty started getting called out for this controversy, many users switched sides, saying that Megan should feel vindicated because these are the kind of teachers she was talking about. Now we should break down what was said and why it was problematic. Let's start with Lauren. Saying that a student barely qualifies for an IEP is blatant ableism, obviously. Even if a student appears to not need an IEP, for instance, if they get good grades, that doesn't negate the fact that said student legally requires a certain level of accommodation. This part also confused and upset a lot of people because IEPs aren't easy to obtain. IEPs are filed for those with physical, intellectual, and or learning disabilities, language and or behavioral disorders, and vision and or hearing impairment. The reason I say and or is because a student can have one or more of these conditions. Disabled students go through various evaluations, observations, and tests done by teachers, psychologists, and therapists through the district in order to determine what accommodations they need in and out of class. This could include special needs classes, speech therapy, occupational therapy, test modifications, counseling, transportation, and vision or hearing therapy.
Sure. I think it's something to keep in mind that it may be difficult to get like a diagnosis for something. That doesn't necessarily mean that you would need the IEP. But again, like I said before, like that's what I said before. Like if you're a teacher and you think that it's unnecessary, you can think what you want, but you have to follow the protocols because there were professionals who implemented that. Which is why I don't think it was a big issue for them to talk about it, as long as they're implementing it. But of course, that type of behavior of thinking a student doesn't need an IEP can lead to them not getting it implemented, and that's a big problem from a teacher's perspective. So, yeah.
IEPs are reviewed at least once a year to ensure that the accommodations are helping disabled students make progress. So by saying that certain students barely...
I guess I come from like a little... Because I hear about the infrastructure side of things when it comes to mental health more than other people because my wife works on that side. And sometimes there seems to be... there seems to be some breakdowns, there can be some parents who are constantly questioning what should actually be done with their kid. And this is more in like a group home setting, and they may not be right, but you kind of appeal to them because maybe they have a lot of money and they've donated a lot of money, so they get what they want. And sometimes the protocols that they may want to implement can be bad for the kids or bad for their kids, but they still get it anyway because like they're told to. There's times where parents can be a bit manipulative with their outside doctors, and then those doctors will prescribe like bad medications or bad protocols for the kids, even if they don't necessarily agree with it. I can't be specific about a lot of this stuff, but that's probably it's just something to keep in mind. I'm not saying that happens all the time, and it might be. I don't want to be ignorant and say that it does, but there can be a lot of politics in these decisions. So I could understand like a little apprehensiveness there.
Qualify for IEPs, that's dangerous rhetoric to push because it only makes it harder for disabled students to receive extra help no matter what level of support needs they have. Every student with an IEP is different, even those with the same disability. For example, two students might both have autism, but their support needs could look completely different. That's why an IEP is tailored for each child. Going back to the students who lied about bringing work home, I've seen a couple commenters mention that this could be a sign of ADHD or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Lying about bringing work home is not a sign of mental issue. It's a sign of being a kid. What are you talking about?
Because a common symptom is forgetfulness.
Okay. I have like ADHD. Stop, please. It could just be it's most likely a sign that the kid is just being a kid and doesn't want to bring their work home. Okay, sure, whatever.
Granted, we don't know these children or their situations, so take what I say next with a grain of salt. But if this is the case, regardless of what conditions these students may have, it's pretty common for children not to speak up when they're struggling. People in general are...
Or lie. Some kids lie. It's okay to say.
Often too afraid to ask for help because they don't want to look incompetent or incapable. And this goes for adults and children. Psychologists used to believe that kids didn't worry about what others thought of them until the age of 9. It has since been proven that children as young as 5 years old can worry about how they're being perceived by their peers. This fear of judgment and scrutiny from classmates and teachers alike can discourage disabled students from utilizing their accommodations. And lest we forget Devin's awful comment at the end.
This kid is DUMB, and I would be worried about him knowing what I'm saying, but he can't spell. So he's just sitting over there going, I'm dome.
Yeah. Is this the comedian guy? The real question.
I'm dome. He can't spell. So
is this the I have to find that out because is this the guy who used to be a teacher and is now a comedian?
Watergate? No.
I'm trying to find out because it changes just a little bit. Like he's probably, I mean, like that's from a comedian perspective. Not me. I'm not a comedian, but like maybe he's leaning into the joke a little more because of that.
teacher turned 6 million followers. And finally, there's Devin Siebold, a former teacher turned comedian with 212,000 followers.
I could see why he would be more open to making that joke. My wife said maybe that's why you don't remember when I asked you to do things. Maybe that is the truth. Maybe I just, okay, shut up. Shut the fuck up. My wife's saying that to me. Anyway, just being trying to be normal in the situation. Maybe this guy, if you can give him the benefit of the doubt, he was making a joke, and sometimes jokes are a little bit sensationalized just to drive home like a silly point and be a little goofy. So I'll give him a little bit of break on that. Obviously, them laughing, they should have said it. I don't know if they did at some point. I'd be like, hey, that's funny, but also shitty to say it about kids. He gets licensed to make that joke because he's a teacher, right? So you'll take like a life experience and you'll sensationalize it a little bit, and that's kind of the funny of the joke. But for the rest of them, obviously, they should have been a little bit more hesitant about it.
So he's just sitting over there going, I'm
does he have comedian
yeah.
as well? Do you have comedian in your bio, though?
So you got to like kind of lean into it, lean into it.
This part made my stomach churn. Joking about how fun it is to talk crap about a student in a way that highlights how dumb they are is truly despicable, especially when having a disability doesn't dictate someone's intellect. Disabled folks of any age are fully capable of being smart, talented, and thoughtful human beings, even if their brains process the world a little differently. Sure. Even if the hypothetical student he was making fun of was neurodivergent or able-bodied, it doesn't matter. It was a tasteless joke. Some people argued that they had moved on from discussing IEPs, so Devin was making fun of neurotypical students, which is still not okay.
Yeah, I agree with that, sure.
It's not a teacher's job to raise their students, but as their educator, it is your responsibility to create a safe, judgment-free environment where students can ask questions, make mistakes, and just be themselves. This attitude right here is the reason why so many children with disabilities are afraid to come forward and ask their teachers for help. After a week of backlash, Teachers Off Duty finally responded. On the podcast, TikTok, and Instagram pages, they posted a glorified Notes app apology against a purple gradient background. Like I usually say in these sort of videos, this was more so an acknowledgement rather than an apology. Dear valued listeners, viewers, and followers, we recently posted a clip from an episode about parent-teacher conferences on the Teachers Off Duty podcast social platforms that included a conversation in which we regret that our words and thoughts were not carefully chosen. We know this conversation has caused pain, and we apologize and take responsibility for everyone that it hurt, whether it be a student, parent, or fellow teacher. As teachers, we always want to advocate for our kids and educators and always try to keep them out of harm's way. Unfortunately, during this recording section, we fell short of that. Additionally, looking back, a joke was made that upon listening to your concerns and reflecting, we see was wrong and in poor taste. Often, we use comedy and humor on our podcast that we hope listeners understand is never intended to be malicious, and though intentions weren't meant to be so, the impact it left was. While there may be hundreds of other published episodes in which we show and express our support and how we advocate for our profession and our students, this one failed to do so. Thank you for everyone who called us into a conversation and expressed how our words were harmful and have now given us the opportunity to reflect on how we can learn to do and be better educators and advocates. As always, we appreciate your support and will continue to make a more conscious effort to use our platform to spread happiness and empower others. Most users were not impressed with...
I mean, I think the apology was pretty good, honestly. The thing that bothers me about the apology is probably what bothers other people about the apology, is that it's annoying that every apology now on the internet has to be like some bullshit pseudo... what am I trying to say? It's always, apologies now seem to always have to be some like bullshit, well presented argument, like PR firm. If you understand what I'm saying, like everything comes off as so disingenuous because it sounds like somebody in the PR department wrote that. And so if they believe with what they said, then I think that was a perfectly fine and reasonable apology. But it just comes off so weird because it's part of one of those like things, you know. It's just part of like one of those, it comes off as like a YouTuber apology kind of a thing.
With their lackluster apology or acknowledgement. Around the same time, each individual teacher posted their own acknowledgements/apologies. Well, most of them at least. As of now, Gabe has yet to address anything, and in my opinion, he's sort of letting his colleagues take the fall for this controversy. While he might not have directly made the offensive comments, he was still a bystander.
Which one's Gabe?
For this controversy has yet to address anything, and in my opinion, he's sort of letting his colleagues take the fall for this controversy.
Well, Gabe did laugh, so Gabe, you need an apology with tears. Tears of the Kingdom. I heard it's pretty good.
While he might not have directly made the offensive comments, he was still a bystander. The 3 remaining teachers all had interesting responses, so let's go through them individually. Mr. Williams was the first teacher to address what was going on. He responded to a TikTok comment underneath the official Teachers Off Duty account's acknowledgement / apology. You know what I mean.
So this right here is why our words matter. There's been a lot of discussion, rightfully so, on the harmful things that were said on the Teachers Off Duty podcast. And honestly, before I go any further, I think it's important.
My question is, all honesty, what did the school do about it? Because again, this was, I said before, this is like one of those things where like, that's why I'm a little uncomfortable with, you know, celebrity teachers like this. I'm not, they shouldn't get fired. That'd be preposterous. But like, what are they doing about it? Because like something should, like, I don't know. I think it's reasonable if people were at the very least concerned, like, hey, are these people, based on, you know, the way that they talked, maybe there should be like a sensitivity course, whether you think it's reasonable or not. Because, you know, I'd be, if it was my student in that class and I heard that, I'd be like, this makes me a little uncomfortable. You know, like, what if they're not giving my kid that's what parents might interpret it. What if they're not giving my kid the support that they need, even if it's not a student that isn't disabled? Like, you know, I would be a little apprehensive.
That I apologize for my complicity in the situation and recognize that I'm probably not the advocate that I always pride myself in being.
Tell explained that while he didn't make these offensive comments, he should have put a stop to the conversation in order to let everyone reflect on how these statements could affect their viewers.
Teachers as advocates, we have a responsibility to give a parent a peace of mind that they're leaving their child with someone who
I'll give you a piece of my mind.
Is going to look out for their child. And obviously those comments did not reflect that. There's a lot of nuance in this conversation that makes things messy, but to be completely transparent, to say those out loud will be an excuse. And to the parents and the followers and the students that might watch the podcast, you don't deserve excuses, you deserve...
Well, I don't like that. What does that mean? There's a lot of nuance to this conversation. Like, I think that's great. Talk about it. It's not an excuse. If you want to bring up like, hey, you know, X, Y, or Z, to me, when you say there's a lot of nuance to something and then you don't explain the nuance, it comes off as just trying to tell people that like there's more to this than you just don't get it. So that comes off as a little lazy to me, or dismissive.
To feel heard, and you deserve for us to acknowledge the impact of harm that we caused, and to...
Where the fuck is the thing I'm supposed to get?
What the hell? With people that are already marginalized, and it made them feel othered even further, and for that, I am incredibly sorry.
He then recalled the times he talked about growing up with an IEP and how he never want others to be treated or looked at the same way he was in school.
I know I've shared on here about my personal experiences of someone with a learning disability and my experience with my own IEPs when I was in school, and I would never want a student or a parent to feel the same way I did growing up in school. Comments on
that's weird, because if I was a teacher, he would be the person that I would look at and go, he doesn't seem to need an IEP, by the logic of the jokes that they were making. And so like, wouldn't you be like, oh no, I think that's kind of shitty because I was somebody that people wouldn't think needed an IEP and I needed it? So that seems weird. Are you saying did you actually not need it? And I don't understand. Like you think you'd be a little more personal with it. But okay.
The podcast did just that, and I want to take responsibility for my part of that.
Mr. Williams shared that he had been in contact with the parent of a disabled child, and he encouraged his followers to show her some support. At the end, Tell admitted that he had a lot to learn from the situation, and he asked his followers how he can learn and be better moving forward. In the comments, Tell agreed that the podcast's official apology was not enough. Spoiler alert, out of all the teachers' initial responses, his video got the most positive feedback. Viewers praised Mr. Williams for holding himself accountable and for being open to listen and learn. Some viewers expressed that they were still hurt by the comments made, but Mr. Williams responded to quite a few of them and apologized directly. Tell posted 4 follow-up videos showing his audience that he was making an active effort to learn. In the first video, he explained how students with learning disabilities are more likely to develop mental health problems.
Hi, I am Tell, not Mr. Williams, the teacher today. Today, I'm a student. I have some learning I have to do, and I invite you to come and learn with me. So children with learning disabilities are often overlooked and undiagnosed with mental health issues. And no, it's not because they don't have mental health issues. What's happening is we're looking at the symptoms, we're attributing them to their learning disability instead. In fact, people with learning disabilities have a 25% higher chance of having a major mental health issue, where the people who don't have any learning disabilities are about a 17.5% chance. One study actually showed that 54% of people who have a learning disability also have a mental health illness. That's 54%, and that number is dramatically lower because, like we said before, usually they don't get diagnosed with mental health disorder because symptoms are attributed to their learning disability. Specifically, children with a learning disability are 4.5 times more likely to have mental illness.
In his second follow-up video,
I guess like anxiety or depression, sure.
Tell shared statistics regarding the mental health of parents of children with disabilities. In the third follow-up, he thanked his audience for being so receptive and the numerous disability activists who came forward to have a conversation.
It's not your job as someone with a marginalized status to educate me, but the fact that you've been willing to do that, I'm humbled and thank you so much. You've helped me understand that just because I wasn't the one in the podcast to make those ableistic comments does not mean that my complacency wasn't just as impactful. Not speaking out then is problem enough, but I also didn't think to tell our editors or...
I guess this resonated with a lot of the audience. To me, this doesn't resonate with me. It feels like over-apologizing. Some of it comes off as a little bit disingenuous, but that might just be me. because I feel like it's disproportionate to what happened. Like, I can see why people are upset. It feels like I also have a problem with over apologizing. I know that sounds weird, but I feel like some people will over apologize and not be proportionate. And he might not be doing that. That could just be me and my life experience or whatever. But I have a problem with people over apologizing because I feel like that can come off as disingenuous sometimes. I think that there should be a proportionality to the issue. So.
Producers or the owner of the podcast to edit that out, and that is a huge issue. I know both on the podcast and on my TikTok, I've shared my own personal story of what it was like to grow up with an IEP and be dyslexic and not read until 3rd or 4th grade. I've also documented my journey of being later in life diagnosed with ADHD, anxiety, and a binge eating disorder. I deeply harmed a community that I'm a member of, and that is not okay.
Mr. Williams then said
that's the part that's like weirder to me is like, you think you'd be more sensitive considering you would have had a higher chance of like going through these issues. Or maybe that just made him feel like he can make a joke or be complicit in the joke because from his life experience, it was just like a silly thing, like when I make fun of myself for being a fat boy. Bro, I'm getting attacked. That's a player.
If he wants to call himself an advocate, he needs to unpack his biases and continue to learn. At the end of his 3rd TikTok, Tell let his audience know that he'll be taking a step back from social media in order to reflect. A few days later, Tell posted a 4th video detailing his experiences growing up as a child with dyslexia.
Every grown up in my world would just tell me I need to try harder, I need to concentrate better. And I just couldn't, and I was never able to explain to them why. I could not get my mind to concentrate. When I would sit still and try to read, it felt like there were a bunch of spiders crawling on me and I just had to move. I also had a really difficult time regulating my emotions, and I would have these exhausting crying fits at school and at home. And at the babysitters, I also had a speech impediment. I talked so quickly. My teachers couldn't understand me, so they'd have my sister come and translate what I was saying for them. I was aloof. I'd get these rapid waves of anxiety. I would space out sometimes. And with all of that, they would only attribute those symptoms to my dyslexia. They'd compare my behavior with the other kids in class that were dyslexic, and they'd get frustrated with me. Now, people with dyslexia can absolutely feel those symptoms, especially the anxiety of like having to read and not being able to have the ability to perform the way that adults want you to.
And at 29 years old, he was finally diagnosed with ADHD. At the end of this final TikTok, he told his audience that he'll continue.
It's like an interesting thing to get diagnosed at 29. Is there a need to get diagnosed that late? Like, I'm not even trying to be like an asshole. I mean, I guess if you're still dealing with issues, but if you were already able to make it through school and get to a good place, and is there a need to get diagnosed with it? I guess if you do some kind of behavioral therapy or something, that might help you. Okay, whatever.
Continue sharing what he's learned. And like his initial apology, viewers appreciated Tell's sincerity and compassion. Okay. By this point, most people agreed that he was handling the situation the best. But I can't say the same for this next response. Most people, including myself, who've kept up with the controversy, would agree that since Devin made the biggest mistake, he owed the biggest apology. In total, Devin's acknowledgement is almost 5 minutes long, filled with
it's going to be the comedian.
Almost 5 minutes worth of excuses.
Hello, everybody. So as you probably know, there was an episode of Teachers Off Duty that I was on, and I was recently made aware of a clip that came out on the Teachers Off Duty page. Now, when I first heard about the clip was from a phone call from somebody yelling at me about what I said. And I said to myself, that's absurd. I would never say that. Why would I ever say anything like that? Now, I know some of you may not know what the clip is, and I'd be happy to show it to you. Hold on 1 second.
Devin replayed the clip in question from TikTok, saying how disgusted he was with himself. Devin revealed that he has 2 children with IEPs, so he would never say something like that.
Why do so many people have IEPs? Jesus.
It was baffling to me because I remember...
If everybody has IEPs, maybe we just need a better school system. Because everybody just needs these baseline protocols. I mean, Jesus Christ.
I did Teachers Off Duty, but I do not remember ever mocking people with IEPs. That's absolutely disgusting. And then I realized that the clip was edited. In fact, if you go to the Teachers Off Duty YouTube or listen to the full episode online, this is what you'll see.
He then proceeded to blame the final edit of the episode. According to...
That's not what he did. Hold on.
Edited. In fact, absolutely disgusting. And then I realized that the clip was edited. In fact, if you go to the Teachers Off Duty YouTube or listen to the full episode online,
oh, okay,
this is what you'll see.
He then proceeded to blame the final edit of the episode.
That's not what he did. He said that either the clip that like the Teachers Off Duty posted or the clips that people posted was out of context, and he wasn't actually talking about people with IEPs, which is probably true. It's still wrong. You shouldn't be calling kids dumb. But it doesn't sound like he's talking about the final edit. It sounds like he's talking, because he even references like saying if you actually watch the full thing, which would be the final edit, it's perfectly fine, right? If that's his argument, like, that's fine. I mean, you still shouldn't be calling kids dumb, but he's also not a teacher anymore. He's a fucking comedian, so whatever.
According to Devin, a full minute passed between Gabe's last comment and his joke because of an ad read. Allegedly, the audience, missed out on a whole 60 seconds of conversation. Thus, his joke was taken out of context. It always is, huh? Which to me, in my opinion, is still not an excuse because Devin is still calling kids DUMB in this hypothetical situation.
Why are you spelling it out? Just call them dumb. Well, don't call the kids dumb, but that's what he said. But okay.
In this joke, and that's not okay.
Almost an entire minute passes between Lauren's comments on IEPs and my comments. And yet, when I look at it on TikTok, there's a 5-second clip of her comments, then immediately to my comments, as if I'm openly mocking individuals with disabilities. Again, my own children are individuals with disabilities. I'm not...
Some kids are dumb, Pietro.
Mocking them. That clip was edited 1,000% out of context and shortened so that people could stitch it on TikTok. And they are. And I get the outrage because when I see it, I'm outraged. I'm absolutely outraged. Knowing that people are seeing that, it's disgusting.
Devin claimed that he has nothing to do with the editing, even though, as we learned from Mr. Williams, any of them could have gone back to the editors or producers and asked them to cut this portion out.
This criticism doesn't make any sense to me, though, because, like, again, like, I agree with the sentiment. Well, I kind of agree with the sentiment that it doesn't matter if it's edited. You shouldn't be calling kids dumb, but he's not a teacher anymore, so I don't really care. You know what I mean? Like, he's used to be a teacher, now he's a comedian. Like, if part of it's that's fine. I find the bigger issue, like if you're like, oh, some kids are dumb, and you have a kid in your you're like a parent of a student, obviously you'd be a student of one of the kids, and you might take offense to that. Makes it a little bit more intimate and personal. But he's not anymore. But either way, if his argument is that it was edited, that doesn't mean he has everything to do with it. Especially since first of all, it seems like the actual edited thing was fine. It was the editing of like a clip that got out there, and let's assume that it was from the teacher's ball sack, whatever podcast. Okay. I doubt he's going to assume like, oh, hey, remember when I made a joke about how some kids were dumb? Well, please don't edit that in a way where it makes it seem like I was talking about kids with an IEP because I didn't mean that. He probably just like, if he is being honest, he probably just didn't think that it was going to be interpreted that way. So it's just kind of like a weird framing. Again, criticize him for making the joke. But I don't think that. I mean, it was true. He wasn't talking about kids with IEPs. I mean, but yeah, apologize still, I guess. Yeah, sure. This makes the editing thing make sense to me, though.
Devin reiterated that he's never called a student dumb, and his joke was based on this Hank Hill meme.
What I failed to recognize is that those fake comments,
what's the meme?
On this Hank Hill meme.
If those kids could read, they'd be very upset. Oh, it's a Hank Hill meme. I mean, maybe. Then that's just lazy, bro. You're just stealing jokes from King of the Hill now. That's even worse. Fire this comedian. Fire him.
What I failed to recognize is that those fake comments, those situations that I'm making up in my head, have a very real impact to people that watch this stuff online, to people that listen. And for that, I absolutely apologize. I apologize for this.
Well, I just don't believe this because I guarantee you that he thinks some of his students were dumb. And you know what? They probably were. Okay? Because kids can be dumb. That's why you're there. You're there to make them less dumb. Right? That's your job as a teacher. So yeah.
Joke. I apologize for the impact it's had on people. I apologize for the words that I used that I take responsibility for, and I want to make it right. I welcome any discussion.
This is what he should have said. Hey, listen, some of that was edited into context that made it seem like worse than it was. I wasn't referring to people with IEPs. I was making a joke about how some kids are dumb. That's obviously unprofessional as a teacher, but I'm also a comedian, and like part of me is my thing is to sensationalize my life experiences to make people laugh. That would have been a perfectly reasonable thing for him to say. I think he would have been fine. So yeah, that's what I would have said.
I've been trying to respond to as many people as possible, and I do want to say, obviously, there's no justification for it. Just an apology that is due and that is warranted and that is sincere. I apologize.
Many viewers were not happy with Devin's response. They felt like Devin was using the editing as a cop-out to not take full responsibility, which is how I also interpreted his acknowledgement.
Two nightmare keys.
He was only liking comments that praised him and going back and forth with people who criticized him. So do you think Devin's comments were as harsh and insensitive as they sounded, or was he just taken out of context? I'll let you decide.
I think a little bit out of context, but then also he had kind of like a crybaby response. I don't know. I feel like proportionality response, but whatever.
Anyway, the day after the initial apology / acknowledgement was posted, Lauren uploaded a teary-eyed response.
Hey everybody, it's Mrs. Woolley. I just wanted to come on and talk to you guys for a few minutes. I really try my best to be the best person that I can possibly be.
I threw my back out the other day, and then I had to help my mother put a bunch of heavy things. She's doing like a whole thing with her garden. She's got like 10 bags of fucking heavy soil. I'm just in pain.
I try to advocate for everyone. I try to be there for everyone, but I also know that I'm human and I make mistakes and I'm not perfect. There was an edited clip that went out on the Teachers Off Duty podcast page of me, and a lot of people are offended by it. And after listening to it myself, I'm also offended by it. Regardless of the context or the intention behind what was said, something that I said hurt people, and hurting people is never okay with me. I want to sincerely apologize to the people that I hurt.
Damn, she really went to the Laura Lee School of YouTube apologies for that, huh?
It hurts me so bad.
Lauren went on to say that this clip does not encompass her thoughts on the matter, and she'll continue to advocate for her students and their families. Moving forward, she'll be careful of what she says and how she says it.
So from the bottom of my heart, I am so terribly sorry, and I love you all, and I hope you have a great week.
This is what I'd call a classic influencer apology.
I think it's fine. I don't think it has to be like that big deal. I mean, yeah, it's a little bit whiny, but like whatever. At least it's short and sweet. I hate the 5-minute fucking apologies are insanely disproportionate to me. You know, make your apology, say, hey, I fucked up. I didn't realize I was being insensitive. I was being kind of stupid. You know, I meant it as a joke and I didn't realize what that could have meant to people who received that joke, you know, because a lot of people are like that. You know, we all make jokes that are they're for fun and then sometimes they go a little too far. So I can understand that. I don't think it needs to be, you know, this whole big thing. Her saying she was offended by the joke obviously is like a little like, you know, like, well, preachy, but whatever, you know, who gives a shit?
Right down to the voice crack at the very beginning. And apparently, I wasn't the only one who picked up on this, since many, many, many viewers clowned on Lauren for her vapidness and insincerity. Apparently, Lauren realized that too, because a couple days later, she posted a second apology. In my opinion, this is how she should have initially addressed her comments from the podcast.
First of all, thank you to all of the members of the community.
Ah, with the pride shirt on. Bro, I guarantee that's fucking intentional. So I'm, you know, which, by the way, I love gay pride. Love is love, and I'm being unironic about that. Is that a pride shirt? If it's backwards, I can't see it. But that's like that's a good PR move. I don't know what it says. If that is what it is, that's a good PR move. You know, make it like, see, I like gay pride. I support gay people, and I'm sorry. You know what I mean? It's kind of a 2-for-1 whammy on that one.
Who have put in the work, who have spoken to me and have helped me to educate me and learn over the past few days. I want to address my first apology.
Okay.
Because that wasn't it. That was not it. I realized that I was deflecting and that is not what you deserve. It made it seem like what I said was a miscommunication or like a slip of the tongue and not indicative of the ableist belief systems that
Love is love. Shut up.
Since I was not a student with an IEP growing up, this is not my apology to accept. None of these apologies are mine to accept, but I appreciate that she clarified and held herself accountable in this follow-up. Going forward, Lauren wants to use her platform.
I don't know, man. Part of me, I'm like apprehensive to apologies in general. Part of me feels like she probably meant that first apology, and then everybody was telling her that she didn't mean it. So she's like, okay, I'll just say I didn't mean it, and I'll just make a more sincere apology. You know what I mean? Like it's such a weird thing on the internet, the way that people apologize. But whatever.
To advocate for the disabled community and shed light on systemic ableism.
Thank you for calling me into this conversation and giving me the opportunity to learn. Thank you for the opportunity to grow
like
as
a
a
nerd
person
with those
and an
glasses.
educator. I appreciate you all, and I'm excited to learn alongside you.
Following her second apology, Lauren posted 2 videos educating her audience on disabilities in children. In the first one, she said she wants to learn how to best support her students with IEPs.
So I wanted to look for ways of how to better support my students with IEPs. One of the ways that I like to do that in my classroom is with fidget toys. As an adult currently going through the process of being diagnosed with ADHD, I've noticed myself fidgeting my entire life. I would sit in staff meetings and flip this ring back and forth in my fingers, and I didn't relate it to a neurodiversity until I started therapy. It was like allowing my hands to do something while my mind could focus on other things.
I hate everything. Everybody has a fucking issue now. Hey, I'm 30 years old. I've gotten through my life. Guys, I might have ADHD. I'm trying to get the To me, that just communicates that she's just trying to be like, I'm one of you guys. I also have a problem. You know, so shut up. It's so annoying, you know? Like I just, that's what it comes off as. Like, it just comes off as so insincere. Everybody's talking about how they have a fucking issue now. Oh, I fidget, which means I might have ADHD. Shut the fuck up. Especially as an older person, you know how easy to, like, you can go in there if you, like, this is the problem. There's absolutely a way for her to go into a therapist and then, like, over explain her symptoms as, like, at the age that she is in a disingenuous way, because it's mental health, right? Oh, I fidgeted. That doesn't make you fucking, it doesn't have ADHD. Like, everybody, if you look at the definition of everything, of anything in, like, the DSM-5, really, you could have it. Everybody has a symptom of it. It's not just about having like a light form of a symptom. Like, I fidget sometimes. Okay, that doesn't mean you have fucking ADHD. Like, not every time someone fidgets means that they have like a fucking disorder. You know, I feel like it's so annoying. Let's just look up the symptoms of ADHD. Here we go. Carelessness and lack of attention to detail. You all do that. Continuously starting new tasks before finishing other ones. You all do that. Poor organization skills. You all do that. Inability to focus or prioritize. You all do that. Continuously losing or misplacing things. You all do that. Forgetfulness. You all do that. Restlessness and edginess. Is that what that is? You all do that. Difficulty keeping quiet and speaking out of turn. You all do that. When these become a problem is when they start to become like a really big active behavior. Like, for instance, I constantly will interrupt my wife when she's talking to get a thought out. And she's okay with it because I'll forget the thought, which goes together with the forgetfulness, right? It's not to an extent that I do it sometimes. It literally happens multiple times a day. I'm certainly edgy. Is this what this says? Shut up. Is this edginess? What? Just pronounce it. What was? Okay, whatever.
Edginess.
Sounds like a penis. Right? Okay. It's not that you have a behavior. It's that the behavior is so excessive. Fidgeting sometimes might be a symptom, but fidgeting is different from fidgeting that gets in the way of you interacting as a person. You know, people fidget all the time, but when somebody asks you to stop fidgeting, usually you don't have a distress associated with that. Right? So, like even when I pause videos a lot, people are like, you pause too much, you talk too much sometimes. Yeah, because I'll fucking forget my thought. That's literally it. So I hate it when people are like, oh, I might have ADHD. I fidget. I forget sometimes. Oh, quirky. Like, shut the fuck up. It just bothers and triggers the fuck out of me. It just fucking triggers me that the discourse we have around like mental health. It's like if you have any symptom that slightly aligns with some kind of an issue, all of a sudden, oh, I have ADHD. Like everybody's gonna have fucking ADHD soon, and then nobody's gonna have it, and then people that actually like need support for it are just not gonna get support. It's just annoying to me. It's like childish. It's just fucking shut the fuck up. You know, you don't need a diagnosis and all this stuff for everything that you like. Every behavioral problem you have doesn't need a diagnosis. You can usually work on it yourself. If you notice that you're forgetful, you know, work on that in some capacity. You know, you can do that. You facilitate that yourself. You might have an issue, but like most of the time, it just seems like these people are exaggerating for fucking like just I also might be neurodivergent as well, which means I'm allowed to make the joke. It's just annoying. You weren't paying attention to the symptoms that I put. Okay. I am a victim. I'm a victim, guys. I'm going ballistic here. Okay.
Fidget toys do that for my students. As teachers, this is just one way that we can support our students with disabilities.
Or have fidget toys for your. I mean, what kind of a teacher is she? Is she just like a fucking? Is she just a preschool teacher? Then I don't care. But if you're like a teacher that's teaching things and your kids have fidget toys, that might be bad because it's going to teach them that they have to have something like a fidget thing going on in order to pay attention. Right? I don't know the specifics, but whatever.
Tomorrow to share more.
In her second TikTok, Lauren shared that 1 in 36 children were diagnosed with autism in 2020. She went on to explain how autism spectrum disorder is a spectrum and how every autistic person has different support needs. Lauren said she spoke with various autistic individuals to gain some perspective.
Most autistics will benefit from tools that dampen
Stop.
Various autistic individuals to gain some perspective.
Most autistics will benefit.
Most autistics? What the fuck? Who says that? That's ableist, unironically. Calling somebody most autistic, that's like calling black people blacks. You don't say that. That's most autistics. Oh my God. You're supposed to say people with autism because it is person first language that's supposed to communicate that the person comes before the disability. That is not a joke. That is real. And it's actually a good thing to do. But you call them autistics? What the fuck is the matter with you? Jesus Christ. Oh my God. Guys, I'm going to try to educate you. You might as well just call them the R slur at that point. I mean, holy fuck. I mean, Jesus Christ. What are you doing? Most autistics is wild. Actually out of fucking pocket. That's crazy. Jesus.
Tools that dampen senses to minimize sensory overload. So things like noise canceling headphones might be a good thing to keep in the classroom as an option. Another way is to try and avoid strong scents or smells. But ultimately,
okay, but this is another thing. Like if your kid has an IEP or whatever, or they have like a behavioral protocol, we'll just say, for having noise canceling headphones, makes perfect sense. But not all people with autism are going to need noise canceling headphones. And in fact, you don't want, like, that's in a more extreme case, right? Because if you always give somebody noise canceling headphones when they have a little bit of an issue with sound, that might be negative for them, because sometimes you need to engage in like different types of behavioral therapies that will desensitize people. You know, some people might need noise canceling headphones. Some people might need to hear the noise so that they can learn to cope with it. So even this, I would say that even these things to have in your classroom aren't even a positive. Like, that doesn't necessarily teach kids with autism like in a helpful way. Some of them might need it, and that's different. But like, they should, you know, hopefully get their own diagnosis in some capacity to have like a correct protocol. But just having that in general, I would say like that's probably not the best idea.
You're going to need to get to know your student, and who's the best resource for that? Their guardians. Realize that you're on the same team, and they're going to be a valuable resource to helping that student. And I'd love to learn any information, strategies, or tips that you'd be willing to share down in the comments. Bye.
So, what now? Well, it seems like it's back to business over at Teachers Off Duty. After a 2-week hiatus, Teachers Off Duty posted an episode about prom season. However, in the description, they said, please note, all our episodes are pre-recorded in advance, sometimes not reflecting or addressing current events. All YouTube earnings made through this video will be donated to Communication First, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to protect and advance the rights, autonomy, opportunity, and dignity of people with speech-related disabilities through public engagement, policy and practice change, and systemic advocacy. While this doesn't undo the harm that's been done, I hope this leads to a continued positive change. According to TikToker and autism advocate Laura Hales, apparently she was invited onto the Teachers Off Duty podcast to discuss ableism in schools and how it affects disabled individuals. On the following day, Laura said that the recording session went really well, and surprisingly, Devin was the most genuine in their conversation. And with my luck, that episode will be uploaded the day I post this video, and if that's the case, or whenever it's uploaded, I'll make sure to leave a link in the description if you want to check it out. But as of the day I'm recording, that is the most updated information available. I just want to say right now that my intention with this video is not to cancel or demonize anyone involved. I've seen comments saying that a couple of the teachers were doxxed, allegedly. I don't know if it's 100% true, but either way, I don't support that. So please don't go to these people's pages just to harass them. That's not the purpose of my channel. With that being said, researching for this video made me realize how prevalent ableism is in our society, especially in our school systems. It's so important that we advocate for equal treatment.
That's exactly why you guys have to stop using the R slur, unironically, on the internet, okay? Because it is an ableist slur, and the only reason that you are not sensitive to that slur, but you are to every other one, is because you don't care about people with disabilities. I don't give a fuck, dude. That's the truth. It's the truth. You don't think about them. They're not as invited into different spaces in any capacity as other people. They're seen as less than. Go try to reach out and visit a local group home where people in the IDD community live. Have conversations with them. Talk to them about these things, because it does upset them and it does hurt them deeply, okay? And they also like wrestling a lot. Okay, I don't know what it is, but I do too. So they're fun conversations to have. All right, so keep that in mind.
And equal access for disabled folks. But like I said earlier, none of these apologies are for me, but if you are in any of the communities hurt by the comments made on Teachers Off Duty, I would love to hear your insight down below. So if you feel comfortable, feel free to share. I would also love to make more videos about ableism.
Are you going to read that? Are you going to read that, Anna? Or are you just going to tell them to do that so it gets more traction on your video, huh? Boom. Got him.
Going forward, because I feel like it's an underserved topic. So if you have any stories or topics surrounding ableism that you'd like to see me cover, please let me know down below. And in general, I have a Google form where you could submit potential video ideas. So in general, if there's something you'd like me to talk about, that's the place to leave it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching today's video. If you liked it, make sure to give it a tiny thumbs up and subscribe down below. I love you guys. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time with a brand new video. Bye!
All right, cool video.